There is a moment that changes everything. A single shift in understanding that separates those who chase money their entire lives from those who watch money flow to them effortlessly. Florence Scovel Shinn witnessed this transformation hundreds of times in her New York studio during the 1920s and 30s. She saw desperate people walk in burdened by debt, paralyzed by fear, convinced that poverty was their permanent condition. And she watched those same people walk out weeks later with money appearing from sources they never imagined. Not because they worked harder, not because they got lucky, because they learned something that most people never discover. They learned that money is not your master. Money is your servant. And the moment you truly understand this distinction, money begins to bow to you. Today, I am revealing exactly what Florence Scovel Shinn taught about the master-servant relationship with money, and why this single principle has produced more documented financial transformations than any budgeting strategy or investment technique ever created. Let me take you back to 1931. The Great Depression had devastated America. Banks were collapsing, businesses were shuttering, unemployment had reached catastrophic levels. In the midst of this economic nightmare, a woman named Eleanor sat in Florence Scovel Shinn's studio in New York City. Eleanor had lost everything. Her husband's business had failed. Their savings had evaporated when their bank closed. They were 3 months behind on rent and facing eviction. She had come to Shinn as a last resort, having heard that this teacher had helped others in impossible situations. What Eleanor heard that day contradicted everything she believed about money and survival. Shinn looked at her and said something that seemed absurd given the circumstances. She said, "You have been treating money as your master when it was designed to be your servant. You bow to money, you beg money, you worry about money, you fear money, and money, responding to the position you have placed it in, acts as a cruel master. It withholds itself, it creates anxiety, it keeps you in bondage." But this was never the divine intention. Money was created to serve humanity, not to rule it. The moment you reverse this relationship in your consciousness, money must respond differently. Eleanor was confused. How could she treat money as a servant when she had none? How could she command what she did not possess? Shinn explained that this was precisely the error that kept people trapped in poverty. They believed they needed to have money before they could have authority over it. But spiritual law works in reverse. You must claim the authority first. You must assume the position of master before the servant can appear. This is what Shinn meant when she wrote in The Game of Life and How to Play It. Man can only receive what he sees himself receiving. Eleanor could not see herself as someone with authority over money. She saw herself as a victim of economic circumstances. And as long as that remained her self-image, no amount of effort would change her financial reality. Shinn gave Eleanor what she called a spiritual treatment. This was not positive thinking or wishful visualization. This was a deliberate restructuring of her relationship with the concept of money itself. Shinn taught Eleanor to make declarations that positioned her as the master and money as the servant. Instead of saying, "I need money," which acknowledges lack and places money in the position of power, Eleanor learned to say, "Money flows to me freely as my divine servant." Instead of praying for money to come, which again begs from a position of weakness, she declared, "I am the master of my financial affairs, and money serves my highest good." At first, Eleanor felt ridiculous saying these things. Her physical reality showed empty bank accounts and overdue bills. Her logical mind screamed that she was deluding herself. But Shinn explained that this discomfort was actually a good sign. It revealed just how deeply Eleanor had internalized the belief that money was her master. Breaking that pattern would feel uncomfortable precisely because it was working. Shinn quoted from Your Word is Your Wand, saying, "Your word is your wand. The words you speak constantly are creating your reality. You have been speaking the words of a servant to money. You have been speaking the words of a beggar. Now you will speak the words of a master. And the universe must rearrange itself to match your declaration." What happened to Eleanor over the following weeks was not gradual improvement. It was a complete restructuring of her financial reality that seemed to defy logical explanation. 3 days after her session with Shinn, Eleanor received a letter from an attorney informing her that a distant aunt she had never met had passed away and left her a modest inheritance. The amount was exactly enough to pay their back rent and cover 3 months of living expenses. Eleanor's husband, who had been desperately searching for work, received a job offer from a company that had rejected him twice before. They had called him out of nowhere, saying they suddenly had a position that seemed perfect for his skills. Within 6 weeks, a business opportunity presented itself that allowed her husband to start a new venture with minimal investment. By the end of that year, in the depths of the Great Depression, Eleanor and her husband were more financially secure than they had ever been. When she returned to thank Shinn, the teacher reminded her that gratitude was important, but understanding was essential. "What you have experienced is not luck," Shinn told her. It is law. You changed your position in relation to money, and money had to change its position in relation to you. The servant cannot remain absent when the master calls with authority. But remember this. You did not make money your servant through manipulation or force. You made it your servant by aligning with the divine truth that this is how the relationship was always designed to be. You are not taking anything from anyone. You are receiving what infinite supply has always had available for you. I need to pause here because many of you are recognizing something in Eleanor's story that applies directly to your own life. You have been treating money as your master. You check your bank account with fear. You make decisions based on what money will allow rather than what your soul desires. You wake up in the middle of the night worried about bills. You feel a knot in your stomach when unexpected expenses arise. This is not just stress. This is servitude. You have placed money on a throne it was never meant to occupy, and you have knelt before it hoping for mercy. Florence Scovel Shinn would tell you that this relationship is completely backwards, and as long as it remains backwards, you will continue to struggle no matter how hard you work. If you recognize that you have been a servant to money, treating it as your master, comment below and say, "I have bowed to money." This is not a confession of shame. This is a declaration of awareness. And awareness is always the first step toward transformation. When you name the dynamic that has kept you bound, you begin to dissolve its power over you. Your honesty also helps others recognize the same pattern in their own lives. Now let me continue with exactly how Florence Scovel Shinn taught people to reverse this relationship and claim their rightful position as master over their financial affairs. Understanding why this principle works requires examining what Florence Scovel Shinn taught about the nature of money itself. In her books, she repeatedly emphasized that money is not a neutral substance. Money is a form of energy that responds to consciousness. She wrote, "Money is God in manifestation, as freedom from want and limitation." This statement is revolutionary when you truly understand it. Money is not separate from spiritual reality. Money is spiritual reality expressing itself in material form. And because it is spiritual in nature, it responds to spiritual laws. The most fundamental of these laws is the law of consciousness. Your consciousness determines your experience. If your consciousness holds the image of yourself as a servant to money, that is the experience you will have. If your consciousness holds the image of yourself as a master over money, that is the experience you will have. This is not magical thinking. This is how the universe operates. Shinn understood that most people fail to prosper not because they lack intelligence, opportunity, or effort, but because they have a servant mentality toward money embedded so deeply in their subconscious that they cannot even see it. They inherited it from parents who struggled. They absorbed it from a society that glorifies wealth while teaching that it is difficult to attain. They reinforced it every time they spoke words of lack, every time they complained about not having enough, every time they looked at wealthy people with envy rather than blessing. Florence Scovel Shinn documented dozens of cases where reversing the master-servant relationship produced immediate financial shifts. Consider the story of a man named Thomas who came to her in 1934. Thomas was a skilled craftsman who had been chronically underemployed for years. He worked hard, produced excellent quality, and yet somehow could never get ahead. He would find work, then lose it. He would save a little money, then an emergency would consume it. He described feeling like he was running on a treadmill, expending enormous effort but never moving forward. Shinn immediately identified the problem. She asked Thomas to describe his relationship with money in his own words. He said, "Money controls everything. If I have it, life is good. If I do not have it, life is hard. I am always trying to get enough of it to feel safe." Shinn pointed out that in this description, Thomas had made money the subject and himself the object. Money acts and Thomas reacts. Money decides and Thomas experiences the consequences. This is the language of a servant describing a master. She asked Thomas to reverse the structure. Instead of saying money controls everything, she taught him to say, "I direct the flow of money in my life through my consciousness." Instead of saying, "If I have money, life is good," she taught him to say, "I create the conditions for money to flow to me through my alignment with divine supply." Thomas resisted at first. He argued that this was just word games, that the reality of his bank account would not change because he changed his sentences. Shinn smiled and responded with what she had written in The Power of the Spoken Word. All the good that is to be made manifest in man's life is already an accomplished fact in divine mind. She explained that the money Thomas needed did not have to be created. It already existed. It was waiting to flow to him. But his servant consciousness was blocking its arrival. He was standing at the door of abundance but refusing to enter because he believed he needed permission from money to do so. Thomas practiced the new way of speaking and thinking for 30 days. He replaced every thought of money as master with a declaration of himself as master. When fears arose, he countered them with the truth that he was the director of his financial experience. When old habits of begging or worrying emerged, he consciously chose the position of authority instead. The results began appearing within 2 weeks. A former client called Thomas out of nowhere, offering him a long-term project at twice his usual rate. The client explained that they had tried several other craftsmen, but none could match Thomas's quality, so they were willing to pay more to secure his services. Then an opportunity arose to teach his craft at a local community college, providing steady income and positioning him as an expert in his field. Within 3 months, Thomas had more work than he could handle and was actually turning down projects. For the first time in his adult life, he was saving money consistently and feeling financially secure. When he returned to Shinn, he admitted that he still did not fully understand how it worked, but he could not deny that it worked. Shinn told him that understanding would come with time and practice. The important thing was that he had proven the principle in his own experience. She said, "You did not get more money because the universe finally decided to be generous with you. You got more money because you stopped blocking it. Your servant mentality was a dam holding back the river of abundance that was always trying to flow to you. When you removed the dam by claiming your position as master, the river had no choice but to flow. This principle applies not just to receiving money, but to every interaction you have with money." Florence Scovel Shinn taught that most people give away their authority over money in ways they do not even recognize. They give it away when they pay bills with resentment, silently cursing the money that leaves their account. They give it away when they make purchases with guilt, feeling unworthy of nice things. They give it away when they hoard money out of fear, refusing to let it circulate because they are terrified there will not be more. Each of these behaviors reinforces the master-slave dynamic with money in the wrong position. Shinn taught a different approach. When paying bills, she instructed her students to bless the money going out and declare that it returns multiplied. When making purchases, she taught them to receive with gratitude and an open heart, affirming that they are worthy of all good things. When saving money, she emphasized doing so from a place of wisdom and stewardship, rather than fear and hoarding. She wrote, "Money is a symbol of God's opulent supply. When we hoard it fearfully, we are saying to God that we do not trust Him to provide more. When we spend it guiltily, we are saying we are unworthy of His gifts. But when we use money as the powerful servant it is meant to be, directing it with wisdom and receiving it with gratitude, we align ourselves with the infinite flow of divine prosperity." Let me tell you about another case that illustrates how completely this principle can transform financial reality. In 1936, a woman named Margaret was struggling to support her family after her husband became seriously ill and could no longer work. She had 3 children and no income. The logical options were grim. She could seek charity, which she found humiliating. She could send her children to live with relatives, which was heartbreaking to contemplate. Or she could somehow find a way to support the family herself, which seemed impossible given her lack of work experience and the limited opportunities available to women at that time. A friend introduced Margaret to Florence Scovel Shinn's teachings. At first, Margaret dismissed them as impractical spirituality that could not address real-world problems, but her desperation eventually led her to try. She began practicing the master-servant reversal with money. Instead of lying awake at night terrified about how she would feed her children, she declared before sleep, "I am abundantly supplied. Money flows to me from expected and unexpected sources. I am the master of my financial affairs, and all my needs are met through divine provision." During the day, when fears arose, she spoke directly to money as a servant speaks to a master. She would say, "Money, you are my servant. You come when I call because that is your divine function. I do not chase you or beg you. I command you with the authority given to me by infinite spirit." Friends and family thought Margaret was losing her mind. How could she speak to money when she had none? How could she claim to be a master when she could not pay the grocer? But Margaret persisted because something inside her recognized the truth of what Shinn taught. She sensed that her previous relationship with money had indeed been backwards, and that this reversal was her only path to transformation. Within 1 month, a series of events unfolded that changed everything. A neighbor mentioned that a local business owner was looking for someone to help with bookkeeping. Margaret had no formal training but had always been good with numbers. She applied and was hired on a trial basis. Her work was excellent, and she was soon made permanent at a salary that covered basic expenses. Then Margaret discovered that she had a talent for making and selling baked goods. What started as a way to stretch the food budget became a small business when neighbors began requesting her bread and pastries. Within 6 months, the combined income from her job and her baking exceeded what her husband had earned. More importantly, Margaret's relationship with money had been completely transformed. She no longer feared it or begged for it. She directed it with confidence and received it with gratitude. Her husband eventually recovered enough to do light work, and together they built a level of prosperity they had never known before his illness. When Margaret shared her story with others, She always emphasized that the money did not come because she discovered some hidden talent. The talent had always been there. The opportunities had always been available. What changed was her consciousness. By claiming her position as master over money, she was able to see and seize opportunities that her previous servant mentality had made invisible to her. Florence Scovel Shinn was clear that becoming the master over money is not about greed, manipulation, or accumulation for its own sake. This is crucial to understand because many people misinterpret these teachings as justification for materialism or selfishness. Shinn taught the opposite. She said that true mastery over money comes from understanding that you are a channel for divine supply, not a container for hoarding. The master does not cling to the servant. The master directs the servant toward useful purposes and trusts that the servant will always be available when needed. "In your word is your wand," she wrote. "Make your preparation for your good, then let it go. Trust infinite intelligence to lead the way and bring it to pass." This means that once you claim your authority over money, you must also release your grip on outcomes. You trust that the universe will provide exactly what you need when you need it. You do not worry about how it will come or whether there will be enough. You simply stand in your position as master, make your declarations, take inspired action, and allow divine supply to express itself through the appropriate channels. This brings us to the practical application of this principle in your life right now. How do you actually begin treating money as your servant instead of your master? Florence Scovel Shinn provided specific techniques that I want to share with you. First, you must become aware of your current language about money. For 1 week, notice every thought and word you speak about finances. Write them down if possible. You will likely be shocked at how much servant language you unconsciously use. Phrases like, "I cannot afford that," "money is tight," "I am always broke," "I never have enough," or even seemingly neutral statements like "money does not grow on trees," all reinforce the master-servant relationship in the wrong direction. Once you become aware of these patterns, you can begin replacing them. For every servant statement, create a master statement. Instead of "I cannot afford that," say "I choose to direct my resources elsewhere right now." Instead of "money is tight," say "I am directing money toward my priorities with wisdom." Instead of "I never have enough," say "I am abundantly supplied for every need." These may feel awkward at first. That discomfort is the old programming resisting change. Push through it. Speak the new words, even when they feel false. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that the feeling of truth follows the declaration of truth, not the other way around. Second, Shinn instructed her students to speak directly to money as one would speak to a servant. This may sound strange, but it is powerfully effective. When you need money for something, instead of worrying and wondering where it will come from, speak with authority. Say, "Money, come to me now. You are my servant and I require your service. Come through expected and unexpected channels. Come quickly and abundantly. I command this by the authority of infinite spirit." When you pay money out, speak to it as well. Say, "Go and do good work. Return to me multiplied. You are my servant even as you leave my hand. Bring back greater abundance than I send out." This practice shifts your consciousness in a profound way. You stop feeling like a victim of financial circumstances and start feeling like the director of your financial experience. The feelings follow the practice, not the other way around. Third, Florence Scovel Shinn emphasized the importance of what she called keeping your money happy. This means treating money with respect and gratitude rather than fear and resentment. Never speak negatively about money. Never complain about what it costs to live. Never express bitterness about bills or expenses. Shinn taught that money, being conscious energy, responds to how it is treated. If you resent money, it will avoid you. If you appreciate money, it will come to you. This is why wealthy people often attract more wealth, while poor people often stay poor. It is not just economics. It is consciousness. Those who have money typically have a positive relationship with it. Those who lack money typically have a negative relationship with it. The relationship must change before the results can change. Fourth, you must give money its proper place, which is beneath you, not above you. This means refusing to make financial decisions from fear. It means not allowing money concerns to dominate your thoughts and emotions. It means trusting that as you maintain your position as master, the servant will always be available. Shinn wrote, "Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." Your faith in your divine right to abundance must be stronger than your fear of lack. When fear tries to reassert the old master-servant dynamic, you must consciously choose faith. You must declare, "I do not serve money. Money serves me." This is divine law, and I align with it completely. Let me share one more transformation story that demonstrates the full power of this principle. In 1933, a young man named Robert came to Florence Scovel Shinn with a different kind of financial problem. He was not poor. He had a good job and earned a decent salary. But no matter how much money he made, it seemed to disappear. He could not save anything. He could not get ahead. Money passed through his hands like water through a sieve. He was mystified because he was not spending extravagantly. He was not making obviously bad financial decisions. The money simply vanished, and he could never account for where it went. Shinn told Robert that he had what she called a leak in his consciousness. Somewhere in his subconscious mind, he believed he did not deserve to keep money. He was unconsciously giving it away or losing it because deep down he felt unworthy of accumulation. This is a subtle form of the servant mentality. Robert did not consciously beg money or fear it, but he unconsciously believed that money was too good for him, that others deserved it more, that he should not hold on to it. Shinn helped Robert identify the source of this belief. He had grown up with parents who constantly said things like, "Who do you think you are, and do not get above yourself, and money corrupts people." These messages had lodged in his subconscious and created a pattern of self-sabotage around finances. Every time money accumulated, his subconscious found a way to disperse it so that he would not become the corrupted, uppity person his parents had warned against. The treatment Shinn provided was specific to Robert's condition. She taught him to affirm not just that money came to him, but that money stayed with him. She gave him the declaration, "Money comes to me, and money stays with me. I am worthy of accumulation. I am worthy of prosperity. I keep money as a wise steward of divine supply, and there is no leak in my consciousness through which it escapes." Robert also had to directly challenge his inherited beliefs. He had to consciously reject the idea that money corrupts and replace it with the truth that money is neutral energy that takes the character of its owner. In the hands of a corrupt person, money does corrupt. In the hands of a generous person, money blesses. Robert was a good person who could use money for good purposes. Therefore, he was worthy to have and hold money. Within 3 months, Robert noticed a dramatic change. His bank account began growing for the first time in his adult life. He was not making more money. He was simply keeping more of what he made. The mysterious disappearance had stopped because the leak in his consciousness had been sealed. He later told Shinn that he finally understood what she meant by being a master over money. It was not about domination or control. It was about stepping into the proper relationship that allowed money to serve its divine function in his life. As we approach the end of this teaching, I want to emphasize the spiritual foundation underlying everything we have discussed. Florence Scovel Shinn was not teaching a technique for material gain. She was teaching alignment with divine truth. The master-servant relationship between you and money is not something you create. It is something you recognize. It was always the design of infinite spirit that abundance would serve humanity, not rule it. When you claim your position as master, you are not grabbing power that does not belong to you. You are accepting a position that was always yours by divine birthright. Shinn wrote, "Man is a perfect idea in divine mind, and is always in his right place. Therefore, I see myself as perfect idea in divine mind." This applies to your relationship with money just as it applies to every other aspect of your existence. In divine mind, you are abundantly supplied. In divine mind, money serves your highest good. In divine mind, you never lack and you never fear. The work of spiritual prosperity is not creating something new, but removing the false beliefs that block your experience of what already exists in truth. So here is the summary of what Florence Scovel Shinn taught about money and how you can apply it immediately. Money is not your master. Money is your servant. Every word you speak, every thought you think about money either reinforces the correct relationship or inverts it. Your current financial condition is a mirror of your consciousness about money, nothing more and nothing less. To transform your finances, transform your consciousness. Stop speaking the words of a servant to money. Stop begging, worrying, fearing, and resenting. Instead, speak the words of a master. Command money with authority. Receive money with gratitude. Direct money with wisdom. And trust that as you maintain this consciousness, divine supply must manifest in your experience because it is spiritual law, and law cannot fail. Remember what Shinn declared. Every great work, every big accomplishment, has been brought into manifestation through holding to the vision, and often just before the big achievement comes apparent failure and discouragement. Your transformation may not be instantaneous. The old patterns are deeply ingrained, but if you persist in claiming your rightful position, money must eventually bow to you, because that is its divine function. The universe is not withholding from you. You have been withholding from yourself by accepting a position that was never meant to be yours. If you have made it this far, it is because your soul recognizes truth when it hears it. And I want you to know this is not accidental. Divine prosperity exists for people who are ready to align their consciousness with the spiritual laws that govern abundance. People who understand that prosperity is not just about working harder, but about thinking differently. This is not just another finance channel teaching budgets and investments you can find anywhere. This is where we explore the metaphysical principles Florence Scovel Shinn taught that transform financial reality from the inside out. If you are ready to claim your position as master over money, subscribe to Divine Prosperity and turn on notifications. Every week we release new teachings on spiritual laws of abundance, the power of the spoken word, and how to dissolve prosperity blocks. Not theory, practical application. Because what you believe creates what you receive, and what you speak manifests in your life. Next video, we are revealing the exact declarations Florence Scovel Shinn gave her students for immediate financial breakthrough, the specific words that activated divine supply in cases that seemed hopeless. Your prosperity is divinely ordained. Money was created to serve you. The only question is whether you will step into that truth and claim what has always been yours. The choice is yours, and I will see you in the next video.